Okay, I'm going to review how we did on week 5. It was a really good week overall. So let's go over with what I got right. First off, the algorithm pre- correctly predicted 12 winners out of 16. So that's really good under any circumstance. And plenty of the losses of the 4 losses, I don't think any of them were really gross losses at all. And certainly if you were for the ones where it didn't predict the winner, if you took the under, you would have gotten it. So a really good weekend overall. Also, one of the things that I look to do is how well do I predict the scores. I'm also looking to see how well I do with the yards passing and rushing, things along those lines. But I'm not so much going to talk about that as much as we're just going to kind of go over the weekend. So let's start with what I got right. I'll go over these 4 games: Raiders versus Chiefs, the Bengals, Ravens, Cowboys versus the Rams, and the Packers Giants. We'll kind of talk about them a little bit. So the first thing I would say with the Raiders Chiefs is the scores are pretty close. Um, a little bit on the higher end, but the thing that I would really point out is a lot of the Vegas odds had the Chiefs win this by quite a bit, whereas I had this being a bit tighter, something closer to 4 points, 3 or 4 points. Turned out to be a 1 point game. It was a close game the whole way through. Overall, I would say that uh, uh, I think the Raiders definitely played a little bit above themselves, scoring 29 points. And as you see, they were closer. I had the upper end right around 28. And the Chiefs, I think that they, scoring 30 points, they were certainly really close to that 28. Pretty close spot. They just barely pulled it through. So overall, I thought that was a good prediction. They played well with what was predicted for that game. The next game I would talk about is look how close the the Bengals Ravens game was. So the predicted was, as we have up here, right around 22 to 20. The actual score was 19 to 17. Both well within the the scoring bracket here. Um, and their overalls matched up really close as well. The one thing I would say is that the predicted point spread, Baltimore is favored by 3.5, and they won by 2 points, which was pretty darn close to what the prediction had as well. So again, that was another uh, good prediction by the algorithm. And then lastly, or not lastly, but next I would point out the Rams, the Cowboys Rams. This always pains me. I'm from LA. I'm a Rams fan, but this was right on. So the predicted score, as you can see, was 22 to 10 effectively. That was in fact the score. Um, and I would also point out that the Rams are favored to win by 4.5 points. So if you took this game, this would have been a really good game to bet on. So that was a good one. And then finally, what I would point out is the Packers won in this case, but the fact of the matter is it was a lot closer game than what anyone predicted. Uh, uh, so the Packers were favored to win by 8.5 points, I believe. In this model here, we had it. Uh, the prediction was pretty much dead even, and it was a close game the whole way through. And so again, even though it didn't pick the winner, it it pretty accurately predicted uh, uh, how it was going to be. So the actual score is 27 to 22. So the so with that's one to where when you look at it from a betting perspective, this game was a lot closer than what the odds ever really had it. So that's a really good understanding to have. But as all algorithms go, certainly got some things wrong as well. So we'll go talk about the Colts Broncos, the Texans Jaguars, and the Bears Vikings. By the way, this type of analysis is where I find that I learn the most about how to understand what the outputs are coming from the algorithm. Again, this is an algorithm that I've programmed. I've been working on it for a number of years. Um, it's fun to do. That's the reason why I do this, because it helps keep me with using football as a way to uh, understand how to look at situations, how to look at the world, and get an idea as to how things might come out. That's the reason why I find this so fun and so interesting. So in this case here, I would point out that I predicted the Broncos to win. I predicted them to win upward to score somewhere around 20, 24 points. And of course, this turned out to be a low scoring game. And I find this one is interesting because one, Indianapolis Colts aren't a very good team, so I'm not particularly surprised. As you'll notice, the Colts performed within what they were predicted to perform in, but completely missed on Denver. The thing is by the numbers and in the algorithm, is it really likes the Broncos. It's saying that the Broncos should be a very good team, but instead, in fact, when you kind of look at it, the Broncos have a win against a very good 49ers team, but they barely eked it out. And they've also lost some pretty close games. They've also lost some games that they probably should have won. And so with that, when I look at the numbers and when I look at some of the other predictions, the algorithm really favors Denver quite a bit, and that's something that I need to keep a watch on. So again, as you look at it, this was predicting Denver to win by upwards of 8 points, and they didn't come. They lost, so not even close. Let's look at another one that I got wrong. The algorithm really likes Jacksonville. It favors their running game. It intends to be over predicting how well they do. The outcome here was again a low scoring game, which is another thing that I think we can point out as a common trend is when the algorithm, when a team apparently has some good stats, and some of that's just might because of the way that sometimes when teams get beat, particularly when you look at the two blowout teams for Jacksonville, it could very well be that they're getting a lot of garbage yards at the end of the game, and that tends to inflate those numbers. But again, you look at a Houston Texans team, which is a poor team, ended up winning for their first victory, by the way. But they're a poor team. If you look at the numbers, there's no reason why they should have won, other than the fact that they were able to keep it close and they were able to pull it out at the end. Those are very hard to predict, but obviously this is a very different outcome than what we had in the prediction, which was somewhere between a 9 and 10 point win. And then finally, I would point out that the algorithm also likes the Bears. So one thing I'd also point out is for each of these, the algorithm is oftentimes queuing on better run games, and I think it's also biting off on garbage yards at the end of the games than what they really have. And so Minnesota, although the one thing I'd also say is Minnesota, historically speaking, can be a really good team and then just really underperform at certain times. In my opinion, they tend to play to the level of their opponent. So when I look at this, I look and say, well, Chicago may very well have a strong run game. They don't have a strong passing game. And Minnesota has some poor looking numbers. If you look at the right over here, they don't have a particularly good pass defense. They don't have a great run defense. And they don't really pass the ball very well. So why would I think that they would do anything better than what they were predicted to do, which was to put up 15 to 20 points? That seems right to me. However, I've seen nothing from the Bears that really makes me think that they're a 20, 25 point team necessarily. When the highest number of points that they've scored this year was 23 points against a poor Houston team. So this is one to where I'm going to have to really pay attention to see what is it that makes these teams appear to be better than what they really are. And again, this is one to where Do you want to go in and play with the algorithm, or do you simply want to understand its biases so you can understand the results a little bit better? I would tend to argue that changing the algorithm and the processes that the software works is probably more dangerous because you just can end up introducing errors elsewhere. That's what I found on this. So here's some other things to talk about as we go on for the next weeks and throughout the season. Injuries. The algorithm, I do not have a method, although I'm building one, on how to consider what the potential impact of injuries are going to be. Right now, that's something that you need to look at, and I would take, for example, Carolina. That's a team that the algorithm, I think, has been pretty accurate on. Um, but when you lose Baker Mayfield, who is a mediocre quarterback on otherwise what would appear to be a poor team, their stats aren't half bad. And so things like that we have to account for. And that can be difficult to account for. You can do it, but how do you account for a team that has lost a large number of key players, but none that are really going to stand out? Those are difficult things to assess. The next thing is how well did a team improve? Teams improve throughout the course of the year, and typically speaking, I would look at a team like Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers teams, historically speaking, improve throughout the year, and that's the type of thing to say. Just because they're not good now doesn't mean that they won't be next week. That is something always to keep an eye out for. Then something else is the way that the model is programmed is I don't take into consideration the number of points that they've scored. That is not a variable used within the algorithm. I also don't use their wins, their losses. I also don't use their red zone efficiency and their third and fourth down efficiency. So the red zone efficiency and third and fourth down efficiencies are readily available. However, I've been in debate as to whether or not I should include those or if those are a result of the other parts of their offense which are captured. So again, these are just some factors to think about. Overall, it was a great week for the algorithm, and tomorrow night I'll be releasing my predictions for week 6. Have a good night. Thanks for listening.